the gun.
Good morning. This is the last part of the William Goodwin Rennick collection of European firearms, part 10. Lot 1. £500 for it. £500 bid at 550, 650, 650 pounds at 650. All down 650, 750, 850, 900. At 900 pounds, at 900 then. At 900 pounds and 50. Bids on my right, 950, 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400. At 1,400 pounds then. Against you all at 1,400. You all down at 1,400 pounds. 1,500.
Ars gratia artis, art for art's sake, perhaps not quite for art's sake only. Arms which are exquisite works of art were still deadly weapons. The finest were made for the nobility and royalty, and have always remained exclusively the property of the very wealthy.
All done.
On sale here at Sotheby's is part of a collection of arms assembled by an American collector, and only 3 arms in 2 lots comprise the whole sale.
But what a sale! Just look at the inlay work on the butt of this musket. Look at the exquisite detail of the birds, animals, and monsters. And turning to the cock, the treatment of the monster motif. Or coming to the spring, the very fine chiseling work. In fact, the stock seems to be the work of Michel Leblanc of Amsterdam, and to date from the 2nd quarter of the 17th century. Of the barrel maker, we know rather less, since only the initial letters appear. It's also a secret for whom this weapon was actually made. But it's no secret that there are many people today who would give anything to own this weapon. But we do know about these pistols, the other lot in this remarkable sale. These pistols were made for Louis, Dauphin of France, later Louis XIV, and they were made by Pierre Bergier of Grenoble, who was a remarkable gunsmith and also watchmaker. The work is exceptionally fine. The barrels are beautifully damascened in gold, and one can see on them the royal motifs of the crown dolphin and the crown fleur-de-lis. The stocks are of ebonized pearwood in fishtail style. The mounts are in gilt brass, and the trigger guard is of iron damascened in gold. The locks, though, are of exceptional interest, because these locks are waterproof, they're superimposed, in other words, 2-shot. These are quite exceptional holster pistols. There is no doubt that when these pistols were made, somewhere between 1638 and 1643, the wheel lock had come a very long way, since Leonardo da Vinci, about 1500, had sketched the first designs for it.
Leonardo's designs are really very practical. Whether guns were ever fitted with his wheel lock or not, the mechanism would certainly have worked. In fact, all wheel locks have certain features in common. They all have a steel wheel on a main shaft, which is wound up by a key applied to the end of the shaft. A piece of iron pyrites is clamped in the cock, which can be lowered onto the wheel. The wheel, part of whose edge fits into the pan containing the priming powder, rotates at high speed when the mechanism is released. This fine wheel lock is too precious to fire nowadays. In use, the cock would have been lowered into the pan, where friction with the rotating wheel strikes sparks off the pyrites to ignite the charge. Of course, the wheel lock did not entirely supersede older forms of arm. This combined pistol and crossbow from Venice also has the distinction of being one of the oldest known wheel locks, from about 1520. The gun was a decorative vehicle for the talents of craftsmen and artists in the 16th and 17th centuries, above all in the artistic treatment of the wooden stock and furniture of the gun. And especially popular as decoration for the gun was bone inlay. The carving of bone furniture and the treatment of inlay often shows artistic skill of a very high order. It was very much in vogue with 16th century stockmakers until mother of pearl came to oust bone in the 17th century. The range of subject matter employed in the embellishment of guns sheds an intriguing sidelight on contemporary life. This gun belonged to a 16th century German prince. A very distinctively German, or at least Central European, pattern of wheel lock is known as the Zinker, a light small-bore hunting rifle with a particular shape of butt and trigger guard. Zinkers were later made in flintlock forms. This Zinker is inlaid with mother of pearl. Carving was by no means confined to the inlay of the furniture and the wood of the stock. It was freely used on the metal parts too. The Zinker always possessed a distinctively open work lock with no part of the mechanism concealed. This magnificently chiseled gun is a self-spanning wheel lock, a refinement of the design which doesn't need winding up with a key. The oldest true flintlock comes from France, and the design is a great improvement in terms of simplicity over what had gone before. An early cousin of the true flintlock is the snap-haunce. It was probably invented in Holland in the mid-16th century. In the snap-haunce, sparks were struck out of a piece of flint held in the jaws of a cock. On pulling the trigger, the cock descended over the pan. The pan had a cover, which was usually opened automatically by a mechanical linkage. Sparks were showered into the pan when the flint in the cock knocked back the pivoted steel. Another early form of flint-ignited gun, particularly favored in Spain and North Africa, was the miquelet. In the miquelet, the cock holding the flint is released by a sideways-acting sear protruding from the lock plate. The arrangement of steel and pan cover is simpler than in the snap-haunce, for in the miquelet, as in the true flintlock, they are combined in one piece, which is knocked open by the descending flint at the same time as sparks are struck. But it is the external mainspring and bridle which really distinguish the miquelet from the true flintlock. Slow-motion photography reveals the sequence of ignition of the flintlock and one of its shortcomings: the delay before the firing of the main charge. Efforts were subsequently put into reducing the ignition delay and accelerating the flintlock's action. Elegance, like the swan-neck cock, was a byproduct of this quest. Mechanical improvements, like roller bearings to minimize friction, were as important, if less aesthetic. Not only was the look of the lock changing, at the same time the overall stock form of the gun was evolving. For muskets and carbines, a deeper and flatter butt shape was taken up, especially by the French, leading on to the styles of today.
The lock, the stock, and now the barrel. Just look again at the Damascene work on Bergier's pistols. And the care these barrels display is a reminder that the crowning glory of all royal arms was the barrel. That is, until the coming of fluid steel overwhelmed all. But no treatment of the subject of the barrel would be complete without a reference to Lazzarino Cominazzo. The Cominazzi were barrel makers in Brescia in Italy, but they're particularly known for their work in the 17th century. The barrels are surprisingly light and attractive in appearance. The breech form is octagonal, and the barrel forward of the breech section is round. These barrels were exported all over Europe, and England too was included in their distribution. The style of the barrel, in fact, is not quite a sufficient safeguard. because weapons like this are very frequently forged. In fact, it's probable that more fakes of the Komi-Nazi barrels are to be found than the genuine article.
The most attractive barrel style to many eyes is the so-called Damascus twist. The beautiful figuring on such barrels comes from the intertwining of bars of steel and wrought iron, which were forged together, rolled and twisted, flattened into a strip, wound round a mandrel, and finally hammered and welded into the barrel tube. Iron and steel were not the only barrel materials. Brass was very common too, and silver was sometimes used. There was almost no limit set upon the artist and craftsman either in the matter of materials or of design in the decoration of guns. Gold and silver, bone inlay, ebony and ivory, colored inlays, silver wire inlay, all these embellishments and more were applied to arms. In striking contrast to the rich decoration of so many guns is the comparative severity of the all-metal pistol. Not only the barrel and lock, but the butt itself is made of steel. Though this steel form of butt is to many the hallmark of a Scottish pistol, it was in fact a dominant form for only a short period of time and not confined to Scotland. And plain wood, with very little in the way of additional and more exotic materials, could be most magnificently carved in rich detail. An arm fit for a king was generally an arm obviously destined for a king. For the saddle holsters of Louis XV of France, a pair of flintlock saddle pistols were made by the king's arquebusier, Jean-Baptiste Laroche. In these pistols by Le Laroche, no trick has been missed in dazzling the eye with a stunning mélange of blued and sculpted steel and gold. They are exactly what we should expect to emerge from the Galerie of the Louvre for a king. Today, these Laroche pistols are priceless treasures of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Once, only a king could have possessed them. Nowadays, only a museum or a very rich man. For fine guns fetch high prices in the sale rooms of the world, as the Dauphin's Berger pistols demonstrate.
Lot P2, Lot P2. The pair of French superimposed load waterproof wheel lock holster pistols, Lot 2. At 21,000 is bid at 21,000. At 21,000. At 21,000 pounds back of them, 22,000. 23,000. 24,000. 25 at the back. The bid is in the room now, 25,000 pounds. Against you? 26,000. At 26,000 pounds is bid then at 26,000. At 26,000 then,